hands that once caressed an old and hunched form, in rites of expiration, searching for growths that doomed their species to short and painful lives. Hands that scribed the rulings in the court of the Silent King. Hands that embalmed the pharaohs of Nihalak, and sorted the tomes of a people defeated, in libraries worth billions of lives. Hands that had let fly the amber lanterns into the sky above vast dunes, begging the solar gods of the Necrontyr to keep the illness away during the new year. Hands that now clawed and scratched, flailed and railed against the wardens bearing the sigil of Sautek. Across a barren scape, with the Scythian black tombs and mud huts side by side, an entire species walked. An uncountable procession, from pharaohs in bejeweled finery, escorted by legions of loyal guard, to the mass of peasants, stumbling and carrying their dying upon stretchers, the dead piled upon the sides, as towards the roaring furnaces the Necrontyr marched, their godlike allies dancing above the fire that lit the landscape for miles. Avatars now in the shape of the mythological gods of old. The hunched figure had resisted. He had tried to break free, until the fires of biotransference emulated his form. Fire, burning, pain, unbearable pain, then all sensation evaporating. A mind awoke, in a form of living metal. A body that would never age, never feel sickness or disease. A body bound by a command protocol for war that would break the galaxy. A war that would see the hated Old Ones and the rise of the Eldari. A body alongside its brethren that would shatter their star gods. That would bind their shards to their will and begin its great sleep. Awakening when the galaxy would once again be ready for their domination. A fool's errand, they had called it. An exaltation to the inferior, some had even said in his presence. Yet Trazyn, some called trickster or thief, now called Infinite, still marveled at the collection, each time journeys brought him back to Solemnace. I chop out the mechanisms of occurrence and study them at my leisure. The history of the galaxy is an open book to me, and my collection is the story of everything. Trazyn had declared in the age when their will was bound to one, bound to a silent king and gods they had broken. The greatest artifacts, the documentation in the False Planets galleries were the greatest the universe would ever know. And when the archivist known as Trazyn The Infinite awoke from his great sleep, finding himself abroad millennia before the destined time, the opportunities to expand the galleries was a temptation too rich to deny. The lack of competition and oversight was just a welcome bonus. Trazyn had travelled the galaxy for so long, he had forgotten what year he had started. Collecting, studying, ordering the cultures of the cosmos. The galaxy had changed much in the 60 million years of slumber, and yet, Trazyn observed, some things had stayed the same. Trazyn let his mind return to the present. The ranks of Lich Guard before him thrusting in a perfect phalanx. The corpses of Eldari Exodites at his feet, as the Silent Legion marched forward under his protocols, towards the temple's gates. Scorching blows traded from doomsday arcs, into towering reptilian creatures emerging from the lush jungle. A gigantic corpse slumped to the ground, its carcass burning, as Trazyn lamented its loss. He'd always wanted one of those for his collection. Trazyn left the Lich Guard's captain's body and rejoined his consciousness in his true form. He strode down the Wraithbone corridor, taking in the carved reliefs and lamenting the lack of time to catalogue them. The Exodite's forces were pushing him more than expected, and the true prize lay within. Mosaic gated doors parted as Trazyn emerged into a chamber that swept up around him like a cavernous grotto, its upper reaches lost into the echoing vaults of the ceiling. His metal feet sounded off the causeway, its wraithbone marbled with veins of gold. Filigreed balustrades on either side mimicked the corals of the ocean depths. For Kefril was a world of warm seas and lush archipelagos. On either side of the walkway, pools of liquid platinum cast watery light across the walls. "Now," he muttered to himself, "where are you, my lovely?" In a shrine of bone, crystal and antler too beautiful to behold, Trazyn caressed the carnosaur's skull that emanated heat and light, touching it delicately as if it were a newborn. Trazyn felt the heat grow in his core. In a body that had no biological component, he shivered in anticipation. "It is not so often I meet a thing as old as I am," he said affectionately, already imagining the gallery upon Solemn Nace. The song of countless Eldari souls sang from the gem that bloomed with amber light. A song so enticing, he almost failed to dodge the lance aiming for his head. Trazyn's metal frame dodged. His chronosense slowed enough for him to see the 20 lance-wielding warriors, yet not enough to slip aside the bone jaws that clamped around his chest. He sent one bone-crushing punch into his captor, as sparks and fluid sprayed, his form crunching in upon itself. "Trazyn, who is so-called infinite, this world sings for your blood. I know you will return," a Farseer's voice projected into his thoughts. "But I will enjoy this." He never enjoyed being dead, despite his people's obsession with it, Trazyn thought, as his body was ripped apart. Empathic obliterator in hand, Trazyn once again blasted through the mosaic gates, his form finishing its transmutation from his Lichguard captain's into his own. Awoken from sleep without his Pharaon's permission, there had been little will to dominate. In sculpted wraithbone armor, a wedge of carnosaur riders ploughed towards the intruder. Trazyn held up a cube darker than the emptiness of space. Prismatic light speared out in a beam, dancing on the lead rider, then spreading in an arc. Questing, analyzing, measuring the dimensions of each rippling muscle and strand of perfumed hair. In a flash, the charging formation was ripped from the material verse, leaving the empty trail before Trazyn almost eerily quiet. Trazyn plunged a fist through the ancient carnosaur's skull. Its brittle structure cracked. Eldari souls rushed up from the fractured cranium like embers, drifting out of whatever wraithbone had been woven around and through it. The gem in hand, Trazyn felt the heat grow in his chest. The sensation of deep satisfaction ran through each atom of necrodermis. A moment to be treasured, until security alerts buzzed in his mind. Intruder upon Solemn Nace. "Chief Archivist, Overlord, Master," Sanet the Light Sculptor, Trazyn's chief curator, knelt. "Solemn Nace rejoices at your return." Trazyn acknowledged the exaggeration. Only a handful met their lord, the rest already crafting an Exodite hall in its false gallery upon Solemn Nace. Only a skeleton crew walked the false halls of this false world. Even Sanet, his chief cryptech, had not emerged unscathed from the Great Sleep. Trazyn found his chief curator's short-term memory at times fragmented, Perhaps this was the destiny of all Necrons. All of Trazyn's brethren awakening in 10 millennia by his calculation. It is no sense of small relief that he, Trazyn the Infinite, the galaxy's greatest curator, had awoken intact. Exhibit breach in the Dawnwood sector. Gallery 123. Thoth subcontinent. Coordinates 52941472-171. Sanet blurted. The Hrudburrow ecosystem. Trazyn snarled. He conjured a holographic image. Though encapsulated in heartlight holograms, those with a touch of the warp did not endure the time-frozen existence as well as others. It unfortunately drove many insane. Such was the curse of inferior creatures. For even in the time of flesh, no Necrontyr was linked to that realm of madness. The many of the instincts of the flesh were gone. Trazyn felt the prickle of imminent danger. Instinct that the intruder alert was more than it seemed. He tracked the signal's location, using the holographic map, and bathing himself in emerald light, tracking the signal to a gallery where a swarm of maiden scarabs were not listed as active. In the galleries of the War in Heaven, a catalogue Trazyn had personally witnessed and painstakingly assembled, a perfect tetrahedral pyramid, shaped from living metal, sat in the hands of the being he despised the most. Orikan the Diviner. The Sautek Astromancer was by far the most wretched bastard Trazyn had known in life and in living death. In divination, the study of time and its manipulation, there was no better. Even Trazyn could admit that. Where one looked to the past, the other obsessed with the future. But Trazyn was sure that the real contention was that Orikan was simply the most devious, self-absorbed, venomous fool his race had spat out. Glyphs glistened on the surface of the tetrahedral pyramid in Orikan's hands, iridescent in the low light. Veins of crystalline substance marbling through its structures. The Asterium Mysterios, breathed Orikan. Interesting. I had wondered what that was, said Trazyn. Archivist. Orikan paired the greeting with a polite bow. It achieved the proper depth and angle for a greeting of equal colleagues, but remained just shallow enough to communicate contempt. Astromancer, said Trazyn, returning the bow with a nod. The proper gesture for an overlord greeting guests on his own world, serving as both a welcome and a warning. It was, consequently, identical to the dueling bow. Had you announced your arrival, I would have arranged a honor guard. A figure of your reputation should not be wandering here alone. Kind and proper, my colleague. Kind and proper, Orikan responded, moving sideways. But I would not trouble you, especially since, for a planetary overlord, you are so often away from Solemnis. Thievery is beneath you, Orikan. Hand back the trinket and perhaps we can continue your research under supervision, said Trazyn. Understand? Orikan snapped. To understand is not in you, Trazyn. You're a bird building a nest with shiny things. A child with a rock collection. Even if true, I see no reason why that allows you to steal my things, Trazyn responded. You stole it first from the Amunos dynasty, Orikan snapped. The Amunos dynasty is naught but inert metal now. You can't steal from the dead. That's called archaeology. Orikan lunged forward. Neither he or Trazyn had been warriors in life, yet the diviner had simply selected the timeline in which he cut down his rival. Orikan unleashed a flurry of blows, eliminating the form before him, only for it to revert back to a Lich Guard captain. Trazyn swung his obliterated Orikan's back, sending him careening into the gallery, his new form already asserting itself over its proxy. "I like to keep a spare body in this gallery," Trazyn chuckled. "So much faster to stream my consciousness into it than come by barge. Translation can destabilize the stasis fields, you know." Sparking, Orikan's form rose as he lunged out again. The two timeless rivals traded insults, almost as vicious as their blows. "Do you know how to shape the future?" Orikan said, a smile in his avian voice. He fixed Trazyn with a stare, as both paused around the display of early Necrontyr ceramics. "By destroying the past." Purposely, Orikan turned and smashed the display around him. "Barbarian!" Trazyn roared, diving to collect the shattering priceless relics. Elegant dueling turned into primitive wrestling, Orikan's laughter echoing with each of Trazyn's punches. The living metal frames made anything less than energy-based weapons useless. Trazyn did not care. The sacrilege had birthed a blinding rage. "Barbarian," Trazyn said, rolling to the side, his anger spent. Orikan sprang to his feet. "This can end, Archivist," he said. "Surrender the Mysterious, and it will stop." Trazyn looked around himself, to the priceless history shattered around them, and to the Lich Guard halted at their side. "A bargain," said Trazyn, his voice betraying his desperation. A bargain for Orikan to use his chronomantic powers to reverse the damage, in exchange for this Mysterious. With utmost care, and with great reluctance, Trazyn placed the Mysterious on the ground between them. Orikan blinked. "The difficulty, Trazyn, is that undoing the damage means travelling back to the timeline before all of this occurred." He met Trazyn's gaze. "And if I did that, you would have no memory of this accord." A transdimensional beamer lance zapped the Mysterious, sending it into a pocket dimension. Trazyn died for Orikan, as the diviner turned the sidearm on himself. By the time Trazyn's hands had gotten there, nothing occupied the space but empty air. Trazyn the Infinite, Archivist of the Solemnace Galleries, stood in the center of his ruined past. He roared a screeching buzz that reverberated around the room. In the pieces of their people's treasured past, with a single piece of ritual tile from Orikan's frame in hand, Trazyn steadied himself, then rallied. "Sanet, bring me the legal codes. The volumes on interdynastic thefts and trials." Trazyn stood alone before Lord Nemesaur Zubakar, Overlord Vorkush, Ferak Asuria, and High Metallurgus Quelkar. All sat upon onyx thrones. Thwomp, thwomp, thwomp. Catch. Executioner Phileas swung to the side. The summons of the awakened council was absolute. Orikan was bound to show up. And if he did not, Trazyn thought, they would cancel his reanimation protocol, and Executioner Phileas would hunt him down with that great execution scythe of hers. It was a delightful thought. The awakened council had been a necessary evil. For Trazyn, Orikan, and a few others who had awoken millennia before the destined time, there had been an unfortunate number of assassinations. Or worse, overlords who had awoken mad, raising entire tomb worlds before the proper rites could be performed. The council had been formed to protect the rights of the sleeping, and to adjudicate feuds such as the Infinites and the Divines. A tear in reality ripped open across the onyx floor. "I would prefer we make this quick," said Orikan. Trazyn began his rehearsed speech, speaking of the desecration, the thievery of vile Orikan, how the diviner had vandalized the relics of their heritage. Almost theatrically, Trazyn pointed to his hololithic images, and the displays and the galleries in ruin. "Priceless antiquities," Trazyn had exclaimed. Lord Nemazar Zubakar leaned forward. "How did you obtain this? That pipe's Mefrit made. It should be in our gallery." "My dear Overlord," Trazyn said, "Solemnes holds all these objects in trust for the good of our kind." "Damn it, that has my family's sigil on it," Zubakar spat out. "If you make a formal request through the proper channels, we can certainly arrange its return." Trazyn removed the holographic display. "You are in your right to protest the diviner's intrusion, as well as his vandalism," Overlord Vokush said. "But I see no reason to pursue death or banishment. Why have you escalated this petty dispute so high? This Asterium Mysterios, the object of Orikan's desire, a puzzle box?" Vokush asked. "A mere puzzle box," said Orikan. For a glance from Vokush hushed him. "A map," corrected Trazyn, reading the glyphs upon its surface. "It leads to the tomb of Nephreth the Untouched, the last natural pharaoh of the Amunos dynasty." An audible groan resonated around the room, for all knew the tale of Nephreth, the principal character in the drama of the War in Heaven, a play based upon the events in the Time of Flesh. Nephreth, the overlord who resisted the so-called star gods. And if the myths were to be believed, a being resistant to the cancers that ravaged their bodies. A prize Trazyn now saw as a key, and Orikan as a setback. "It's a historical play," Ferak Osuria interjected. "Or history-inspired, at least. But to suggest that any of it resembles what actually occurred." "You don't remember, do you?" inquired Trazyn. "I mean, truly remember. Step forward if you recall the days before biotransference." All fell silent. The days of flesh were like dreams to the eidetic memory of metal. Who they had been in life, their homes, their families, their loves and hates, were all a haze, a blessing to some, but a vile reminder of their once cruel gods. The thought occurred to all of them that perhaps their true selves had died, and what remained was an incomplete copy.
In the drama, Nephreth was killed attacking the star gods, scorched to nothing by the Burning One. But my archive contains an account that Nephreth's own dynasty betrayed him, murdered their pharaoh and his followers to broker peace with the star gods and gain their gift of biotransference.
"Quite an anticlimax," Vokush muttered.
Indeed. But his relatives in the Amunos dynasty, despite their betrayal, apparently wished to hedge their bets. After all, they possessed the only genetically uncorrupted sample of the Nectrontia species, free of disease and blight. They hid the dead pharaoh in a stasis tomb complex called Cephres, hoping to return and recreate the species if they found biotransference not to their liking.
"Fascinating," said Vokush. "What purpose do you have for keeping this object, Trazyn?"
"He wants it for his gallery,"
said Orikan.
"To stare at it, or rather not to stare at it. He didn't even know what he had. It will simply collect dust. A curio serving no purpose."
And what purpose would it serve for you, Orikan? Asked Vokush.
None,
Growled Trazyn.
He doesn't believe in a return to the flesh. Orikan wants us to be energy beings, things of light. If he found Nephreth, he would likely incinerate the Pharaon to keep rival cryptex from finding a solution that was not his. Ulterior motives, my overlord.
Ulterior motives, you say? Ask how he acquired it.
It's not your time to speak, sand tick.
Yes, quite right, said Vokush. But the question stands. How did you acquire this?
Legitimately.
Trazyn turned off the orbiculium and packed it into his pocket dimension.
If that is all.
Legitimately how? Vokush pressed.
It was part of a lot acquisition from the Amonos crown world of Hashtor. Tragic story, Hashtor. A solar flare from the local star triggered a failure cascade to its stasis system. It's a dead world, legal under salvage.
No one moved. The Amunos dynasty had been powerful, secretive and distrusted, but their absence would be a blow.
The Amonos dynasty.
Trazyn paused, looking around the room to let the message sink in.
Will not come to claim it.
The council and the executioner stood, stunned at the dire pronouncement. Vokush murmured in the back of his throat. That appears to be legal, under salvage.
But when did you acquire it?
Goaded Orikan. He took a step forward, tile strands rattling against his skeletal body.
I have not yielded the floor.
Did you steal the Mysterious before the Amonis died out, or after? Because by my auguries, you raided their vault for artifacts well before the solar flare. In fact, immediately when it became clear, the solar flare would snuff them out.
Your information
Trazyn said with a hint of frost.
is incorrect and out of procedure.
Wait, said Vokush. Are you alleging that Overlord Trazyn, aware of the solar flare, did not alert the Tomb World's deep spirit, and instead raided it for artifacts?
Just so. As you heard him say, the Amonis dynasty will not come to claim it. A perfect theft. He walks away with the goods, and the cosmos wipes out the victim. No one can complain.
That is ridiculous.
Villain. Plotter. Traitor to your own kind.
But is it true? Demanded Vokush. Keep in mind my vocal scryers are on high alert. Any lie will be detected.
Well,
Trazyn tutted in frustration.
understand there was little time to make a decision.
A groan went up from the council.
No. Listen. Awakening a tomb world takes time. At least a half-century, even under optimal conditions. To save even the higher orders would have taken more time than was available. So I focused on salvaging what I could from the material culture.
Murderer, snarled Ferak Osiria.
I foresaw your treachery, and...
Wait,
Trazyn motioned for quiet.
you foresaw it?
Of course, I foresaw the horror of biotransference, the fall of the Eldari. I have seen the coming of hungry creatures you cannot fathom, and...
If you foresaw the solar flare, why did you not stop it? Did you hope to sweep in afterwards and take the Astrarium without resistance?
Orikan stared, frozen. His mouth worked, giving a metallic clunk, clunk, clunk.
You misunderstood me, I think.
Executioner, said Vokush. Take them both. The Amunos dynasty. Trazyn paused, looking around the room to let the message sink in. Will not come to claim it. Trazyn felt unbalanced. A deep sense of déjà vu caught him off guard. He looked down at his hip, feeling the heat radiate off the tile piece he had kept from Orikan's incursion. His mind felt obscured. Are you well, Trazyn? A counselor asked.
Poor Trazyn,
Orikan interjected.
He invited me to conduct research on Solemnes. I also have a device. We were simply comparing them.
Orikan opened his hand flat.
You see,
Trazyn stared at the Mysterios.
Partway through our symposium, he became confused. Poor being. Accused me of stealing this device.
Trazyn sent a spectral scan over the Mysterios. A 100% match.
Bastard! He has it!
Trazyn yelled.
You solved the first puzzle!
Trazyn roared. As he leapt towards Orikan, Executioner Phileas close behind.
Oh, hell.
Orikan sighed.
The Amunos dynasty.
Trazyn paused, looking around the room to let the message sink in.
Will not come to claim it.
But that does not alone confirm your salvage rights, does it? Said Overlord Balbahek. Trazyn looked at him, stunned. Balbahek. Had he always been at this trial? Trazyn felt sickness in a body without biological components. His heat detections read searing levels at the piece on his hip.
If I may, overlords,
said Orikan, stepping into the center.
For my understanding, the Asterium Mysterios is exempt from the laws of salvage. It is part of our common heritage, owned by all Necron kind.
Assertions seemed to rise around the room.
Why should we let the Nihalak control this incredible find? Whoever takes the Asterium Mysterios should have a chance to seize this once-in-eternity opportunity for power.
Trazyn had the sinking feeling that he had been tricked. That the bastard Orikan had somehow outplayed him, with sycophants and partisans. Very well, said Balbahek. The Asterium Mysterios will be owned by all and none. A free object belonging to he who possesses it. Stealing it shall be no crime, killing for it no sin. And whoever opens the crypt may keep its contents for the greater glory of their dynasty. As the ruling finished, Trazyn stared at Orikan, realizing what he had done. The smug viper had simply rewound time to choose the outcome he most desired. He had no doubt that the power and skill required pointed to only one who gave him a look that said, I have won this round. 9,000 years before the destined awakening, Trazyn's frustration had grown as the centuries passed. The Saltec were jumped-up warmongers, so it was little surprise that his meteor shower of body doubles had been eviscerated, broken easily by defensive guns of Mandragora's atmosphere. Trazyn hated the unimaginative, and that was certainly what he had been these last centuries in direct assault against the Saltec. The Mysterios was a map, an artifact so small it hardly required a large force to take it. He would have to be more imaginative. Trazyn sat with his council of cryptecs, pondering in silence for what felt like decades.
There are 2 artifacts that might assist you,
Sanact finally said.
Artifacts,
said Trazyn, skepticism echoing in his vocals.
I have searched the catalogue 6 times. There's nothing. Not here on Solemnes, my lord,
smiled Sanet.
Forgive me, but yours is not the only collection in the galaxy.
Trazyn considered dismembering the cryptech on the spot for his blasphemy. But Trazyn listened, turning Orikan's tile of pure space-time in his hand. The vaults of blessed Gehenden. The Nihilak treasure house had not been graced by the Infinite in many years. Not that Trazyn was very welcome. Upon a black stone chair, Trazyn sat inside the mouth of the dynasty's greatest treasure, a reptilian Xenos blessed with the power of foresight. Its existence, its very unknown, gave Trazyn chills as he keyed in his question. He did not need the Mysterios yet, so he asked where Orikan was destined to be, for it was only proper to let others do the hard work where suitable. The shackled creature gave its answer. A world of great oceans and islands lit upon the display. As to his shock, Trazyn recognized the world. The Exodite's enclave, the home of the jewel that sat at his hip. Alarms began to rise across the vault. The Time Splitter cloak, forged from crystalline shards of time itself. An ancient chronomatic artifact that allowed the wearer to see the matrix of the future. It fit rather nicely on Trazyn's shoulders. He would return it, once his quest was finished. Probably. Within a ghost ark, upon a world coined by its inhabitants as Kefril, Orikan drew the Mysterios out of his dimensional pocket. He could feel its hum, matching the song sung by the planet itself. Ever since he had landed, he could sense it, as if the world had a rhythm. The Exodite forces, even the human civil war called the Horus Heresy, would not have stopped Orikan from reaching this world. In his hand, the Mysterios began to glow, from pink to amber, then a searing heat. His form rippled and vibrated, until twisting into a display of the world itself. In an archipelago, a glyph rune lit up. It had taken centuries of work, delving into the works of Nefreth's datamancer Vishani, the greatest cryptech of her era, and Orikan had finally found it. The clue to the tomb of Nefreth. How disappointing, said Trazyn behind him, as the glyph read, next opening, 8,000 years. Orikan whipped around in shock, then was sent tumbling, as Trazyn's hands rolled upon the Ark's control orb. Standing where the Ark pilot should have been, Trazyn met the gaze of Orikan, preening in his new cloak. You may have abilities, said Trazyn, inching forward and seizing the Mysterios. But I have artifacts. Doubtless this cloak's powers are a poor echo of what you've achieved through years of study, but it can at least countermand your Chronos sorcery. If you think I need to alter the timeline to destroy you, Trazyn. Orikan scrambled to his feet, crouching. Then you're more delusional than I thought. Four immortals around Orikan leveled their weapons. Trazyn swiped the acceleration controls, as metallic bodies were thrown back. The Ghost Ark began to dance wildly over the terrain. Trading blows flew between the Infinite and the Divine, as peppering shots from the Necrons and Exodite battle below sent the ship careening. The scramble became locked, as with the heat that radiated from the Mysterios, an energy from the world itself, Orikan swirled with a strength that exceeded Trazyn's. Surprise was evident in both, as Orikan seized the upper hand, reveling in his new energy form. A searing strike pierced the side of the Ark, sending immortals tumbling out. Trazyn caught a glimpse of the rushing ground below, his oculars catching the form of Scorpec destroyers. You brought the Tainted here? Trazyn shouted. It was their price, said Orikan, as he leered over Trazyn and prepared for the final blow his rival's cloak could not evade. Trazyn's hand moved again over the control orb. The Ghost Ark plunged down. The great Saurian, a lizard beast of towering proportions, looked up,
unable to move as a ghost dog ploughed into it. Exploding in a shower of meat, the machine and corpse crunched an Eldari temple, as both slumped to the floor, showered in blood, his form sparking but whole. Trazyn fled, leaving his rival in the slopping ruins of their battle. 7,036 years before the tomb's opening, Trazyn worked within the heresy display upon Solemnace. Despite his distaste for uniformity, the years of the human civil war known as the Horus Heresy had been rather busy for Trazyn. He adjusted the display of the event marked Istvan V. Humans were like carnivorous bacteria to Trazyn. In many ways they emulated the Necrons in the time of flesh. Short-lived lives of ambition. But he was sure their time would rise and fall, even faster than the Eldari. Most of their specimens were in truth uninteresting. But this heresy presented a story of drama. Grand betrayal and cinematic battles. He pondered that he may have gone overboard, for his collection had become rather extensive. He had heard that this arch-traitor Horus was dead. Perhaps his corpse would make a fine addition. Sounds emanated around the room, as Trazyn halted, and lifted his obliterator up. "Come out, coward," Trazyn growled. A hand ripped the Mysterios from Trazyn's pocket. Trazyn twisted, grabbing a powered blade from the display and slashing it across Orikan's face. Orikan danced back and hissed. "I have sworn the blood oath," Orikan's voice echoed, as he dashed into a dimensional pocket. "I'll only take it back, you know," Trazyn responded. "It'll be a merry chase." Trazyn stared across the void upon the asteroid, his entourage by his side, Orikan's in mirror. For 8,000 years, the Mysterios had traded hands multiple times. Sometimes the Mysterios was forgotten entirely, in the lieu of a good plasma shot to the face. And now, to Trazyn's surprise, Orikan, who had looked better, stepped forward and offered the Mysterios freely. All for 5 minutes of conversation. "An orc invasion is coming to Kethril, or rather Serenade, the tomb complex of Kethris," said Orikan. "And you care about a few greenskins wrecking up the place, do you?" Trazyn sneered. The bickering began immediately. Trazyn's obsession with collecting and cataloguing, Orikan's use of the destroyers upon Kethril a sore spot. All life down to the bacteria had been hunted by that cursed cult. And now the Eldari were gone, and the opportunity to catalogue them. And now humans in their planned and unified Imperium had come to colonize the barren scape they renamed Serenade. "The destroyers were a mistake," Orikan said. The admission surprising for the arrogant viper that Trazyn knew him to be. But it was the admission next that finally made Trazyn listen. In 50 years, an orc invasion was coming, and in their recklessness, the tomb of Nephref would be destroyed. "You were destined to die on Serenade," said Orikan. "The underground tunnels where the tomb resides will, due to the world's unique geology, cut off any translation signal. Necrons killed beneath the surface cannot phase out." Was it sentimentality that Orikan presented this to Trazyn? Of course not, Trazyn thought. Orikan simply lacked the numbers to stop the invasion himself. He needed Trazyn and the forces of Solemnace, lest others be involved. Orikan sweetened the proposal. "They are led by this boss dog Big Saw, that great sky sower." "You pronounce orcish like it tastes bad," said Trazyn. "It does," said Orikan. I dislike even hearing myself speak it. This gibberish does not appeal. But, linguistic foibles aside, Orikan smiled. He would make a fascinating specimen. Don't you agree? I do, said Trazyn, nodding. Trazyn pondered for a moment, his arm moving to his chin in mimicry of life. It'll take about 50 years to muster a strike force. We're cutting it close. It will, agreed Orikan. The Infinite and the Divine, rivals that spanned uncounted years, prepared for war. Boy dragon gnaw their entrails, Trazyn had snarled, his mind asserting itself over one of his Lich Guard. In the Void War, Bosdrog Big Sword forces had divided, with Trazyn and Orikan attacking the mess of a meteor ship that was quite frankly haphazardly welded together with scrap and could barely call itself a vessel. Stormboy boarders had defiled their way into Trazyn's ship, their scrap jets sending their muscled form corkscrewing across the decks, into the barely risen repellers. The savage beast had turned and swarmed towards Trazyn, probably recognizing him as the equivalent of War Boss. He should have wiped them, but he couldn't help himself as he opened another Tesseract labyrinth. Orikan, Trazyn said, opening a hail. I'm descending down to the translation crypt. My crew will take the Antiquity into an orbital run and release the strike force, then return to assist. Trazyn silenced the link. Orikan's blurts of threats that if he was betrayed were ignored. Trazyn had no doubt that they had both planned to betray each other at some point. Trazyn stood amidst the human colony plaza, witnessing orcs and humans battling around him as he lifted the Mysterios in hand. A line of Lich Guards stepped through a glowing, splitting wound in space-time, shields forwards, swords aloft. A surprising surge of pride brought a heat to Trazyn's reactor, as the forces of Nihalak surged forward in perfect step. His mind turned to the days of glory, when all Necrons were unified. The galaxy was theirs, to rule by the might of their technology and dynasties. Nihalak Ascendant! Cried Trazyn, lost in the moment. Hack, slash, thwomp. The Lich Guard's blades cut in preternatural precision, compared to the onrushing Orc horde. In the far distance, tracking towards the reef's edge, where the entrance of the tomb lay, an Orc gargant stomped, its towering form crushing coral ecosystems with each step, displacing and reforming as its guns boomed. Ranks of Lich Guard and Immortals changed their stance from hold to march. Follow me, Trazyn shouted. Nihalak Ascendant! Wading in ocean's depths, all corpses floating on its surface, Trazyn and a phalanx of Nihalak metal feet marched through the soft sand. Brightly coloured marine life, from a hand size to turtles the size of ghost arcs, swam by, as Trazyn and his warriors pushed through the shimmering sea grass. Luckily, there had been just enough time for him to collect a few specimens. An entrance overgrown by pink coral hid the sight that made Trazyn halt. Incredible, Trazyn breathed. He moved into a vast chamber, his oculars snapping to the structure at the end. It's an eternity gate, he said in amazement. An interdimensional doorway, a relic of a time long past. A treasure of insurmountable value that could never be moved. The Mysterios began to glow with more heat in his hand. Glyphs burned on its surface and resonated with the door, with a large script revealing itself and reading, Hail, Seeker, I, Vishani, lay this curse. Here sleeps Nephrith. Pharaon of the Amunos, the one called the Untouched, conqueror of the stars, slayer of gods and immortals, open and be damned. Meteoric light spilled into the chamber's entrance, behind Trazyn and his forces. Trazyn didn't even have to scan to know who was on their heels. The chamber's walls began to shake, dust flowing into the ocean's water from the rumble of thousands of feet. By the order of Overlord Trazyn of Solemnace, fire! Trazyn barked, as emerald beams streaked into the onrushing Saltec phalanx. Violence erupted, as vibrating phase blades met each other, in clashes that boiled the sea around them. With the destroyers skittering upon the ceiling, an ever-growing number of the war-proud Saltec began to rush the Nihalak line. Trazyn reached into his dimensional pocket. Castellan robots of the Mechanicum found themselves upon an entirely different battle plane, far from the one they had remembered. Abominations, affronts to the machine god. Pseudo-men of iron pushed towards them, as mind-altering scarabs pushed their handlers into an all-out assault. Weaving through the melee of Necron violence, Orikan slammed and sliced, until standing before the glowing Mysterios and Eternity Gate. Its shifting form matched the tone of the song of the world itself, a code only Orikan possessed the skill to decipher. He spoke the cryptomantic algorithm, and the Mysterios slammed inward, imploding, folding and shifting, each of his 20 faces stretching deep into its core, until every angle stood out at a point. A jagged starburst of equilateral triangle faces that brought a mirror's surface to the portal that shimmered and shifted. Orikan saw a billowing green in the center that windowed into the tomb of Nephrith. Trazyn slammed his obliterator into the back of Orikan. "My heartiest thanks, Orikan," Trazyn said. Trazyn stepped forward towards his prize, his satisfaction for outwitting Orikan in the end almost too delicious. Orikan lunged his sparking form at Trazyn, and the two fell into a drunkard's brawl. The sound of metallic ringing joined the chaos of civil violence, until an even greater wave of noise grabbed the Infinite and the Divine's attention. A third force streamed in from the entrance, as Executioner Phileas drove a wedge between the two dynasties, and an override slammed into the matrix of every Necron. This is an override command. All troops of the Empire will cease combat by the order of the Council. This is an override command. Put up your weapons. The penalty for disobedience is death. The Eternity's mirror window faded, as Orikan slammed into stone in a last dash. A scene Trazyn thoroughly enjoyed, but what he enjoyed less was that they had missed the gate's opening. Hundreds of Necrons had been lost, their reanimation impossible, blocked by the signal of Serenade. And worst of all, Trazyn and Orikan would face court in front of the awakened council. Again. "Let me state for the record," Ferak Osuria said, "that this is not officially a trial."
"Can we be executed?"
asked Orikan. "Yes," said Zubakar, with a note of unpleasant eagerness.
"Then it is a trial."
"In a technical sense," said Overlord Baalbahek, "it is an inquiry." Orikan shot a look at Trazyn that signaled, "Look where you have landed us, you crooked-backed madman." So said the delusional fanatic who spoke to illusions.
"Noble council. You surely cannot charge us with murder. Vassals have no legal status as beings. Destruction of property, perhaps. And though I will admit that Master Orikan and I have made very game attempts on each other's lives, here we stand, more or less whole.
Not with the murder of each other, said Osaria. With the murder of High Metallurgist Quelak. For perhaps the first moment in 60 million years, both Trazyn and Orikan's verbal response programs failed. As they met each other's impassive gaze, Orikan shook his head slightly, and Trazyn responded with a shrug.
I had noticed the High Metallurgist's absence, but believed that he had simply yielded his seat to Lord Baalbek, due to his superior rank and prestige.
Do not try to flatter me, Archivist, said Baalbek. A century after the Council's ruling on common heritage, a ruling we have vacated, you should note High Metallurgist Quelak resigned his seat in order to pursue his own studies on Nephreth and the tomb complex of Kefris. He departed immediately for an expedition, presumably on the world currently known as Serenade. Baalbek paused, waiting for one of the accused to volunteer information. He has not been heard from since, he finished. Trazyn tapped his chin, a nervous habit from the flesh times. The murder of a figure holding courtly rank, absent a formal declaration of feud or war, was a serious offence. Wipe out 10 legions of vassals, and the Praetorians would not raise a finger in retribution. But the slaying of an aristocrat, a high metallurgist who possessed rank and privilege equal to planetary regent, was another matter entirely.
And you say he went to Serenade 8,000 years ago?
I can only testify for myself, of course. But I admit I have been absent from the world more than I have been present.
I have found the same. Millennia of spectromantic bombardments and survey sorties, and I have not seen any hint of our kind, apart from Master Orikan. And due to the unusual sharpness of our rivalry, I kept a high degree of awareness regarding signs of Necron presence.
Typical, sneered Zubakar. Like the couple of bandits they are. Neither saw nor heard anything. The ruffian's code of silence. One of you killed him, said Osaria. To declare otherwise strains credulity.
If you believe either of us would consider Quelka a threat,
Cut in Orikan.
You are sorely underestimating our abilities.
Why, Orikan, I believe that's the kindest thing you've ever said to me.
Osaria opened her mouth, then saw that the executioner was about to speak. Counsel, said Phileas, may I suggest that if either of them had killed the High Metallurgist, or indeed knew of his disappearance, they would have already accused each other. Indeed, likely the murderer would have already gone through the pain to implicate his rival, far before the discernment.
True. Particularly given Orikan's history with the High Metallurgist, the charges will lay nicely. Would have been quite the checkmate. You've had a lucky escape, Astromancer.
She's right, Osaria, said Baalbek. These two despise each other, and given their histories, such a despicable stratagem would already be in motion.
Serenade is a dangerous place. Eldari Exedites, orcs, and even a few humans. Not that they are of any consequence. And Quelka was ever launching into endeavors that were above him.
Are you saying? Started Zubakar.
I am saying Quelka was a fool. A well-known fool, and I refuse to be punished for a limp-fingered meddler getting above himself coming to a bad end. Truly, I will not even allow Overlord Trazyn to be punished for it, since I will not be denied my rights of feud. I wish to see his face when I beat him to the tomb, want him to know that I have bested him.
That may be difficult, said Dosaria, given that Serenade is going to be destroyed. In 2,000 years, the Imperium of Mankind would destroy Serenade. The Council's cryptech in the Yithsea had now foretold, a fate directly the result of Trazyn and Orikan's interference. The two had rights to their feud, but the loss of so many Necrons permanently meant they were to be punished. Punished with a ceasefire and each other's company. "I am surprised you decided to come," Trazyn said to Orikan. 1,500 years had passed, a blink of an eye in the life of a Necron, but 1,500 years of stalemate. The Infinite and the Divine stood within the plaza of Serenade's capital, from once a colony that battled an orc invasion, to a thriving culture that expanded across the world. "This is ridiculous," said Orikan, "standing here amongst these biologicals, pretending to be their equals, watching them gargle bean water down their esophagi, swilling it through their fatty insides. It makes one ill." "It is a cultural world. One of the nicer ones in the Imperium, in fact," said Trazyn. "It's a cesspit," Orikan said dismissively. Emitter illusions in place, the two strode down the paved streets. Where Orikan's mood carried in his posture, Trazyn was alight with curiosity, seeing the mesh of long Eldarian reptile bone weaved into the culture of this archipelago civilization, one renowned for its music. "A living history," marveled Trazyn. "They have taken what they considered worth preserving and carried it forward. We have history. Better history," said Orikan. "We do," conceded Trazyn. "But we do not change. Our culture is stagnant, frozen, in many ways less vital than these humans. You can feel this planet, can you not? They can feel it. Serenade sings to them." "Is that supposed to be amusing?" said Orikan. "Perhaps a little," Trazyn replied. The two reached the doors of a grand cathedral. "After you, colleague," said Trazyn. To Orikan's abject horror and Trazyn's delight, both looked upon the stained glass panels, the last depicting a space marine librarian that looked suspiciously like a certain archivist. The ego boost had been more than welcome to Trazyn. The centuries of worship to honor the day the silver librarian had saved the colony from orcs, and the grand statue erected in his honor. "You stole it, did you not?" asked Orikan, referring to the original. "You are an obscene egotist," he said, walking on. Orikan didn't have the statue, Trazyn thought to himself, and he was clearly jealous. Into a crypt, the two descended down from the surface. According to the Mysterios, there was 500 years until the next opening. Time plenty to scout and uncover the truth that ancient datamancer Vishani had locked away. Striding across the still corpse forms of Necrons, lost in the battle millennia before, Trazyn and Orikan stood before the Eternity Gate. The ocean's waters had been drained, and given rise to creatures and critters of bioluminescence. To Trazyn's delight and Orikan's curiosity, it communicated an algorithmic code. Orikan settled onto the floor, legs folded beneath him. "I will need silence," he said. Trazyn waited. "This will likely take a great deal of time," continued Orikan. "Do you not have surveys or inquiries to conduct? Or do you just plan to stare at me for the next 3 decades? Provided you do not mind me leaving you alone."
asked Trazyn. What shall I do without your valuable counsel? Orikan snapped. Trazyn stepped away, feeling Orikan's powers grow, sending an uncomfortable tingle through his form. A thought beckoned that he would never say aloud. That techno-sorcery on some level frightened him to his core. He almost felt guilty. Almost. When he placed a tesseract labyrinth hidden amongst the arachnids and necrodermis corpses. Trazyn's attention was finally caught. He looked towards the ancient human, librarian Coloma, a man he had acquired long ago. He had been young then, a librarian of the Serenade Citadel. To Trazyn, the past 3 decades of research had been a blink of an eye. Now Coloma's skin was saggy, decorated in liver spots, his eyes milky with cataracts. What am I missing, Coloma? What is it about Serenade I do not ken? What is the soul of this place? Why does it feel so different? Ah, said Coloma. You're talking about the Song of Serenade. Why is it unusual? Trazyn asked. Because it's on the pentatonic scale, Coloma wheezed, shuffling over to his lord. It has 5 notes per octave, when the standard scale has 7. It is an asymmetrical pattern, but regular, repeating in everything. The pieces began to form together. What Trazyn had considered a quirk revealed to be a deeper mystery. From the disruption of Necron phasing, to an entire world that beat to the rhythm of 5 notes. A tune that influenced from the street musicians to its history of Saint Solarian, a history the Imperium's Inquisition had tried to erase. Trazyn was quiet for a moment. 5 notes. 1 to 5. Like a numerical signal. Precisely, said Coloma. Trazyn nodded. Get me everything you can on the Song of Serenade, and Sister Solarian. Then go and sit at your desk. Coloma hoisted his old joints up, stair by stair, leaning heavily on his book cart, as he squeaked through the tall wooden bookcases of the archive. With joints riddled with arthritis, he placed the books upon the cart. You have been a good and faithful servant, Coloma, said Trazyn. And you a good master, Lord. My treatments, the hablock close to the library, my children educated in good scholums, an ash box in the Garden of Remembrance, for my dear Morena. I owe you much. I will miss you, Coloma. And I you, Lord. The scarres behind the elderly's eyes lit up. The death was quick, just as Trazyn had promised. Within the cathedral's halls, the dead surrounded the sarcophagi of the true dead. Orikan threw Xenos' severed arm at Trazyn's feet. Claw marks scratched across the diviner's necrodermis. Orikan stared at Trazyn. The Infinite recognized it immediately, a limb belonging to a gene stealer. It attacked me while I was in my meditative trance, said Orikan flatly. Interrupted my focus while I was on the precipice of a great revelation. How unfortunate, Trazyn said innocently. Silence, the pause continuing for a full hour. Well, you don't think I had anything to do with it? Trazyn finally said. Another pause. This one, 2 hours. Finally the two began to walk towards the cathedral's entrance. Trazyn telling his esteemed injured colleague of his revelation about the Song of Serenade. If true, the signal could be followed to the source of another gate. one better protected from the exterminatus in 5 centuries' time. The two halted, as Trazyn's features soured. "Someone has broken my window," Trazyn said. "Have they?" Orikan asked, giving a casual glance towards the vandalism. "Perhaps they thought it was ugly." 350 years until the next opening. Trazyn stood at the precipice of a cathedral tower, his form draped in a monk's brown robes, which from this height and angle meant the disguise was entirely unnecessary. He didn't care. He should be allowed some drama every once in a while, he thought, to break the monotony of millennia. He and Orikan's first report to Executioner Phileas had passed smoothly. He had even managed to get away with the Gene Stealer's surprise upon Orikan. After a while, the diviner joined him at his side, as both their oculars stared down into the human theatre performance in the square. Lanterns lit the night, as reptilian birds reminiscent of the long-vanished Exodite mounts flew in the air. "It's a settlement myth," said Trazyn, looking to the puppeteer on stage. "Saint Madrigal calling the faithful to serenade." "Entrancing," responded Orikan, uninterested. "The subject matter in these shadow theatres is generally historically linked," Trazyn continued. "The fall of Van Dyer, the Makarian conquests, lives of the saints and that kind of thing. If you prefer farce." Both turned to see the howling human crowd, as a lurcherous bishop danced around courtesans. Then a figure in a tattered crown stumbled upon the stage, to more of the crowd's laughter. The pair began to move. "That performer, the one with the tatty crown?" asked Orikan. "King Mischief, yes," said Trazyn. "He has a third arm," said Orikan. Trazyn took great delight in explaining the false arm of King Mischief, a trickster archetype to which he found a certain kindred. Orikan didn't need to speak, for Trazyn to read his thoughts in his posture. It screamed, "Oh, you arrogant bastard," and that he talked too much. The two began their trek, passing outside the boundaries of the human settlements, over sand basins that could have been ocean floors long before, during their previous excursions. The humans had begun selling their ocean's water to passing fleets to cool their reactors. Where once lush jungle, hideous factories bulged out smog for the war machine that never ceased. Serenade was slowly dying, even before the designated exterminatus. It was what humans seemed to do, Trazyn thought. Yet his mind thought back to his own people's history, the short lives they had led, the ambitions that had pulled them to the stars. How they too had left worlds they had conquered lesser. "They are born weak," said Trazyn. "Mature slowly, have short lifespans. And in a galaxy packed with creatures that come into the world fully grown and armed, with fangs and armored with bone, they have still managed to become the dominant force through technology and will." He paused. "They remind me a bit of us, or rather, how we used to be. Ambitious but short-lived." Orikan growled, a displeasing buzzing in his vocal emitters. "We had greater technology, and their lives are much longer than ours were." "Not by much," Trazyn chided. "But most are, overall, adjusted to their short lives. They consider it enough." "They know nothing better," said Orikan, with a note of bitterness. "Our truncated, tumor-cursed lives had to be lived in the shadow of the immortal Old Ones. Before that, we, too, accepted our fate." "Do you think that given the choice," Trazyn said, They would trade their souls for immortality as we did. As you did, said Orikan. I resisted. I saw the delusion. You were only too willing to trade in that broken body of yours. Trazyn stopped, unsure if he had heard it correctly. I went into the flames of biotransference in chains. It is distinct in my engrams. I can picture it with clarity. A lock collar around my throat. Metal hands, tireless, grasping my shoulders. They took me in my library. The one who did it, Nilkan, was a Saltek warden. Orikan stopped and stared into Trazyn's oculus. Trazyn was stunned. It was understandable that Orikan would never fully trust his words. But to think he would lie about the darkest day in his history. We remember it differently then, Orikan said. And despite the thousands of times Trazyn had exchanged words with his rival and colleague, this was by far the most venomous he had ever sounded. After all, you are the historical expert, are you not? Orikan finished. For the rest of the journey, the two strode in silence. Passing through the Serenade sewage system to descend deeper into the mantle. It had taken them nearly 3 local days to get down this far, when Trazyn and Orikan had halted. A human corpse floated in the stagnant water. "Turn it over," said Orikan. "You turn it over," Trazyn shot back. Before the two descended into a sparring match that lasted hours, Trazyn relented, wading in and using his obliterator to flip the body. Both of them ran spectral imaging. The damage was extensive, inflicted by claws and teeth of a powerful beast. It puzzled Trazyn, for its extensive catalogue of Serenade made him sure that this was no creature native to its wilds, let alone within tunnel systems. "He was still alive when it ate him," said Trazyn, and paused, looking to Orikan rebuilding a visualization of the struggle, adding details that Trazyn missed. "This reconstruction, engram images," said Trazyn. "Is that what you see when you speak to Vishani?" Orikan halted his engram, stiffened, and then turned. "Shall we go deeper?" he said, not even looking at Trazyn. Trazyn saw his discomfort. He was sure the diviner thought his little escapades with the Datamancer was his secret. Vishani was long dead, of course, but Trazyn was not fully ignorant of the Cryptek's ways. That through the study of a colleague's lifetime of work, one could almost construct a perfect representation in their mind, as if the dead were made living through their magnum opuses. 4 more days they walked, until they cut through a natural cavern wall and discovered the tomb shaft. Leading into a dark vaulted chamber, human skeletons and skulls decorated its walls, some centuries old and some fresh. At the end of the chamber was a great set of Kakaradon jaws, framing the enormous gateway to the next chamber. Chanting began to echo from the black door. Trazyn and Orikan raised their staffs and strode through. A chamber lit with the light of braziers framed the artifact they had come to find. The second Eternity Gate. Blackstone rubble gave way to a creature. Humanoid and yet not fully human, babbling in prayer before the gate. 3211 1545 4131 5322. On and on it chanted. Then it turned. Orikan sent a lightless stream of particles, knocking back the creature that had lunged for Trazyn. Human bones covered the darting menace, stacked like armor. It moved faster than the two could have predicted. weaving between Orikan's next strike and lunging for the killing blow. A mere meter from the diviner, it froze, a chronostatic hex freezing it in place. Trazyn met Orikan's eyes, sensing the truth, that this was the second encounter. Flashes of a bone-covered beast, writhing and screaming atop Trazyn, flashed into the Infinite's mind. Orikan had rewound time for him. He had saved him, just as Trazyn had intervened on this thread. "Do you hear what it is saying? It is the signal," said Trazyn. "The anomaly we've been following. The strongest signal repeating the Song of Serenade. This is the broadcast source. It's repeating it over and over, screaming it out into the dark." "Never mind that," said Orikan. "We have larger problems. Do you not recognize who this is?" Trazyn stepped around to the front and peered closer. "Dead gods," he swore. "It's High Metallurgist Quelka." "You two may be absurd, venile little children," said Executioner Phileas, "but the work you do is crucial to our future, and I truly believe it cannot be accomplished by anyone else." Trazyn and Orikan, interrupted from trading glyph runes that implied unspeakable insults, turned to Phileas. The time of Great Awakening was mere centuries away. More and more dynasties and forces were arising by the decade, and ascending into civil war. Executioner Phileas was the last of the now dissolved Awakened Council. It embittered both Trazyn and Orikan that they would never get their formal apology for the only accusation that was truly false. Upon Solemnace, locked within the stasis gallery, High Metallurgist Quelka, or the being that had been High Metallurgist Quelka, occasionally leapt at the stasis field's edge, the field sending it tumbling back. A smoke rose from the flayed skin that hunched over its form. Trazyn had found it to be more placid when given toys of meat and bone. "We think you're an absurd venal child too," said Trazyn, locked within his own stasis field. Phileas opened her mouth to reply. "Would you like to hear what we have discovered?" said Trazyn quickly, directing the trio's view back to the creature in the cage. "We had discovered the Eternity Gate by following a signal broadcasting the Song of Serenade. In his madness, perhaps even trapped underground for a time, Quelka has become obsessed with the enumeration." Outside of the second field, Orikan and Phileas looked to Trazyn. Scrolls and tomes surrounded the archivist, and his chin had been worn by the constant scratching. "In fact, he broadcasted so strong," Trazyn continued, "it entered my own neural system when he attacked me. Thus the quarantine. Only 2 more years," Orikan said, with a hollow cheer. "You know, they say those last years are the hardest." Trazyn wanted to strike the diviner again. He would never admit it out loud, just how challenging the quarantine had been. His restrictions in collecting more for his galleries around the universe, ever constant on his mind. With a combined knowledge and design of Trazyn and Orikan, the two had created a separate neural network, designed to pierce through the thoughts of Quelka, without the risk of the Flare virus infection crossing over. Executioner Phileas admittedly was impressed. The haunting wails of 3211, 1545, 4131 never ceased, but it was the fractured mind beneath where the answers lay. "I have found, after far too much time with this subject," said Trazyn, "he thinks of nothing but books." "Books?" Phileas said skeptically. "That thinks of books." "Exclusively," said Trazyn. "Quelka believed this cipher to be a book code, an old type of cryptogram that used a text as a key to decipher a message. There are any number of combinations, said Orikan. Lord Trazyn has been working on this for a long period. I have heard about it extensively. So you just need to find the book, and you can open the Eternity Gate early, asked Phileas. That is the idea, said Trazyn. And your own research, Master Orikan? She turned to the diviner. How does it proceed? I fear that Lord Trazyn has outdone me. I do not expect results for some time. Orikan lied. 173 years before the predetermined exterminatus, Trazyn and Orikan stood within the theatre box, within Serenade City. They had arrived at a time of festival. The founding parades and carnivals centuries before had transformed into a cultural pillar stone. Imperial elites sat in the prominent boxes, in the crimson-decorated theatre. The planetary governor and her heir hosting the Vice Admiral of the Imperial Fleet above the world. Orikan leant upon the box's wall edge, unable to muster the enthusiasm of the transfixed Trazyn. Orikan had asked Trazyn to bring the Eldari gem, taken from the world spirit millennia before. The diviner had claimed it was for an emergency, in case they had to draw on its power to alter the timelines more significantly. Time fluctuations had been more precarious in the last decades. The influence of the warp, so Orikan claimed, though Trazyn was unsure whether to believe in his esteemed colleague. What began with puppets in the town square had become a full production, one beginning soon, to Trazyn's fascination and Orikan's suffering.
Didn't I tell you? This opera is the Mischief King revealed. First performance. 2 centuries ago it was Low Street Theatre. Now the height of sophisticated culture. And along the way the character was softened to be less seditious, I suppose.
He settled his oculars back on the Vice Admiral.
That's quite a las pistol in his chest holster. Engraved orc bone grip, cut from a war trophy, I would guess. Perhaps from the one who took his arm.
Imagine losing an arm and not being able to replace it.
Yes,
said Trazyn, looking at a group of picked actors, getting drinks in the back.
not an eventuality we have to contend with anymore.
If you could go back, would you?
Go back to what?
The Flesh. If one of these ridiculous fanatics actually found a species for us to transfer our consciousness to, or say, if Nephrit's body let us fabricate a new, unspoiled race of Necrontyr, would you do it?
Trazyn paused in his visual scanning and looked at Orikan.
No. Of course I would. It would be my greatest joy to once again feel a soul within me. To taste and touch and feel.
Would it? Because then you would be again subject to disease and death. To age, and I remember you were not so resistant to giving up such things. Old archivist Trazyn, with his bent back from decades leaning over scrolls and scrutinizing objects. Trazyn with his squinting eyes and cane.
I admit there would be sacrifices. I have not thought about it greatly, to be honest.
That's why we're so terrified of the Destroyers and the Flayer virus, aren't we? Our society was death-obsessed, true, but it was bodily decay that we feared most. Those two unfortunate classes of being are reminders that we are not immune. You talk about this human culture while ignoring your own. As you once told me, every society turns into insults and curses what they fear or are repelled by. Our kind has no biological processes, so we do not use profanities of bodily function. We are soulless god killers with no fear of hell, so we do not blaspheme. But we do call each other low and bumbling, because we are highly civilized. I will call you Old Hunchback, and you will call me Mad Stargazer, because that is the root of our fear and shame.
You have become quite the cultural analyst, Orikan. Perhaps my presence has improved you a little.
And I remember how afraid you were that the tumors would take your wits. All the work you had done, so much of it up in that cranium of yours. But if you stepped into the forges, got a new metal body, think of all you could do. Catalogue the entire cosmos if you wished, and all of it to keep you from thinking about how the things that made Trazyn, well, Trazyn, had burned off in those fires. Eaten by the deceiver, or is that your secret, that you do not miss your soul at all?
What brought this on? Because standing in a theatre surrounded by our enemies is a deeply inappropriate time to start a shouting match.
You said that you resisted biotransference, that you went on the run, and they found you in your library.
Yes, I remember distinctly.
You remember it because you were there, but you have it backward. I resisted and went on the run. I fled to the library and lived among the stacks, but it was my library, not yours. And you, Trazyn, you were one of the ones that came to drag me to the furnaces.
Trazyn said nothing, stunned.
I remember distinctly.
If this is true, I am sorry.
Orikan's monocular fluttered.
You are a signature talent, Orikan, rival or no. The galaxy is a more interesting place with you loose in it. And I am glad we have come to a place, willing or not, where we are on the same side. No one deserves what happened during biotransference. No one. Our race leapt off a cliff on the promise that we had wings, and we were deceived.
Orikan looked away.
My only caution, my friend, is that you do not cling so hard to these memories. When the deceiver made these bodies we inhabit, he twisted them. And he twisted our engrams. I cannot remember what my old face looked like, or the place where I was born. It would not be far-fetched for the deceiver to have planted false memories to sow discord amongst our kind. But if that is true, I am sorry.
Outside the field, the lights dimmed and the curtains began to rise. Polite applause ripped through the crowd, like a passing monsoon shower.
We will talk about it afterward.
Yes,
Trazyn said, wrong-footed by the confrontation.
yes, afterward. It's quite short by our standards, only 5 hours. It's no war in heaven.
Thank the stars, I hate that play.
I would have thought you'd like the first 5 acts at least.
Because they deal with Nefret?
No. Do you not know this? It is rumored that the first 5 acts were secretly composed by Datamancer Vishani. Why else would Nefret and the Amonos dynasty play such a prominent role?
Orikan pondered that, rolled it around his logic coils. He was about to speak when Trazyn interrupted him.
It's starting.
The Mischief King entered the stage right, greeted by gasps from the audience. Trazyn sat captivated, recording the puppeteer's display as hypnotic-like music washed over the crowd. It was so very inhuman, Trazyn thought. He welcomed the distraction from the previous conversation
and stared at the King Mischief, watching its third puppet arm move with a dexterity unlike any performance he had seen before. Crack. A noise echoed around the theatre, yet not a single member of the crowd moved. Multiple cracks began to disturb Trazyn's enjoyment. "What devilry is that noise?" said Trazyn, oculars fixed on the performance. Orikan grabbed Trazyn's arm, ripping his attention away from the beauty he was beholding. "This is an ambush!" Orikan exclaimed. Trazyn looked around, witnessing the cracks of pistol fire emanating in pockets around the audience. Transfixed to King Mischief's warp-infused voice, body slumped over, blood spatters splashing on members that still did not move. The door behind Trazyn and Orikan slipped open. A figure raised a pistol and cracked 2 shots into the mind-shackled pair next to them. Orikan lunged forward. Pinning the assailant to the wall. "Spectromantic analysis says it isn't human," said Orikan, the sounds of gunshots still ringing out, interweaving with the song. "It's an alien hybrid," said Trazyn. "I've encountered them before, off-world. This one seems to be 4th generation, likely part of a larger uprising." "You stupid bastard," sneered Orikan. "You got us box seats to a coup." "Well, the reviews were very good," said Trazyn. Orikan threw the hybrid from the box, its fall disrupting the multi-limbed orchestra and throwing the singer out of sync. Snapped from their trance, the theatre erupted in a frenzy. The singer removed the King Mischief mask, revealing a multi-limbed, bulbous-headed humanoid, and silhouetted behind it, a towering version stepped out onto the stage. "I believe, like any good performer," said Trazyn, "we should make our exit." "Is that the creature you unleashed upon me?" shouted Orikan. The two were weaving through the tumult. "At the time I did not know they were infection vectors," said Trazyn, smashing his obliterator onto a bulbous skull and sending ichor across the halls. There was little need for disguise now, as Trazyn and Orikan fled into the open streets. Chaos erupted all across the city around them. Xenos hybrids Trazyn knew the humans had affectionately named Gene Stealers arose from hovels and drains. Salvaged Imperial vehicles ploughed into the planetary regiments and the forces of the Imperial Naval Guard. It seemed the exterminators would come quicker than predicted, as the two were in no doubt that the fleet above was preparing to crack Serenade. The Infinite and the Divine dashed through the violence. Thankfully, a few specimens had been just in range of a few Tesseract labyrinths. The opportunity had been too tempting for Trazyn, and the added drama would make an excellent display on Solemnace. Into the sewers once again, the two dashed towards the Eternity Gate, Trazyn occasionally placing beacons for translocation, in case of burial. After 2 days, the bombardment had started. "You have the Mysterios?" asked Trazyn. "I do." Orikan glanced at Trazyn's collection of curios. "That's the Eldari gem, is it not?" "The Solar gem." "It is. What of it?" Trazyn asked. "The ritual to open the Mysterios requires energy. I will need to channel it." Orikan held out a hand. "May I see?" "Let us go deeper first, friend Orikan," said Trazyn hesitantly. "We are still too close to the surface for my liking." One more day, until the two entered the previous bone temple, the blackstone growing with each step closer to the gate. Trazyn thought he heard Orikan mumble, as their metallic feet tread through the ever-rising water. In a flash, Orikan turned and leapt at Trazyn, snatching the Eldari gem. Trazyn saw the blow coming, and used his cloak to select a timeline he desired. snapping one of Orikan's arms as the diviner jumped back. "What are you playing at, Orikan?" said Trazyn, genuinely stunned. "We cannot both get there, she told me. Only one of us." Who, Trazyn thought? Vishani? Had Orikan gone mad? "Stop this foolishness," said Trazyn. "We have worked well together." "You sent aliens to kill me," Orikan bit back. His voice was almost rapturous. "Dooming this world so that we may not even open the gate. Is that what you refer to? Trazyn, you have unmade this world for a joke." Even if he had planned for it, Trazyn could still not believe it. In truth, he respected Orikan. Part of him even liked him. To have an equal in this universe was not such a bad thing. "Goodbye, my colleague," Trazyn said. Orikan leapt at him. In the desperate scramble, it revealed the Eldari gem was a fake. Orikan thrashed Trazyn's form that gave no resistance. Trazyn grabbed the Mysterios from Orikan's hip, slipping into his own dimensional pocket as Orikan raged at the motionless copy. The planet was splitting. Rocks came crashing around the diviner, smashing and pinning his form. Unable to assume his energy form, he railed as the planet died on top of him. He cursed until nothing but rubble smothered him in the darkness. From the bridge of his flagship, Trazyn stared down at the burning serenade. "Orikan," he broadcast. Silence. "Orikan, identify your position and I can excavate you." Nothing answered, except the song of 3211, 1545, 4131, 5322. Solemnace. Trazyn stood beside the figure that called himself Clone Lord. Decades would need to pass before the next opening of the Eternity Gate upon Serenade. Little but continent-sized asteroids floated in this space. A world of culture had once bloomed. But Trazyn was certain the tomb remained intact, yet he had little faith in Orikan's survival. "How long have you been here?" Fabius Bile asked. "Longer than your race has possessed the ability to stand upright," said Trazyn. "You are immortal," said Bile. "I am persistent. My race has made a habit of persistence. In the time of flesh, when we faced with extinction, we chose instead a new way." Trazyn brought up a hololithic display. In green light, Trazyn recreated through memory of visuals the death of his race and the birth of the Necrons. The terrible gods that had deceived them. The Void Dragon, the Nightbringer, the Burning One, the worst of all, the aptly named Deceiver, and the others, floating above the furnaces of biotransference, devouring the life essence of an entire species. "Look at it, Fabius," said Trazyn. "Is it not wonderful and horrible?" The star beings rose, vaguely humanoid in shape, blazing with searing cosmic energies, awful and breathtaking to behold. Trazyn began to pace, circling Fabius slowly. He could see the Astartes tense. Trazyn had not taken his weapons, for he felt no true threat. An unfortunate encounter with the Emperor's children who called himself Eidolon had forced Trazyn's hand. His offer of gene seed he had borrowed during the eras the humans called the Great Crusade was offered in exchange for his safety, and the prospect of having the one who called himself Fleshmaster and Clone Lord added to his collection was rather tempting. Trazyn could read it in the withered being's posture, that he was an animal being sized up.
Madness,
Fabius said flatly.
All of this madness. You boast of power, but you are nothing more than a thief. And perhaps not even that.
Trazyn stiffened.
Are you the being you were, before you were poured into the metal sarcophagus? Or are you merely the ghost of who and what you once were?
Trazyn met Fabius's gaze. The same could be said of you. Are you even yourself? Or are you merely a copy of a copy of a copy? The faded imprint of a thing long dead. Fabius froze. Yes, I know all about you, Fabius Bile. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps you lack the ability to conceive of true greatness. This galaxy is but a pale, shrunken husk of what it once was. Wonders and glories such as the human mind cannot comprehend. At best, you might glimpse a glimmer of its light, as if at the end of a great tunnel.
Then why are we having this conversation?
Asked Fabius. Trazyn felt the desire to indulge his prospect. I was curious, said Trazyn, and the two felt the understanding between them. Perhaps in Fabius's inferior way, Trazyn saw the same drive that consumed them. When was the last time you backed up your mind? Recently, I hope. Trazyn enjoyed the fear he sensed from the Astartes. He believed it was rare in his specimen. It was no fear for its life, simply a fear of a work unfulfilled, vistas unexplored. I know all about you, said Trazyn. It is quite impressive. I use something similar, though vastly superior in design and function myself. That you were able to cobble together something so useful, with such crude materials, is commendable. The signal has a faint aftertaste. Let's say Eldari, I think.
A variation of their infinity circuit technology. I like to think of it as a neural gate of sorts, allowing for the flow of pertinent data between nodes.
Fabius tapped the side of his head.
Veins of specially cultivated wraithbone inserted into the unoccupied cerebellum of clone bodies, allowed to flourish within set parameters. It acts as a sort of tuning fork, calibrated to a single frequency. Mine.
Very clever. In a primitive sort of way, Trazyn said, the arrogance difficult to keep from his voice. All guests on Solemn Nace were scanned upon entrance, and it had not escaped the notice of Trazyn, the deep flaw within this cloned figure.
The Blight,
Fabius said flatly.
I am aware.
No doubt. It always creeps back, does it not? It has buried itself so deep in your marrow that whatever soil you set your roots in rapidly goes sour.
I have made peace with my mortality. I persist out of only a sense of obligation.
So I have heard, said Trazyn. His mind thought back to his dear colleague, Orikan telling him he had been too keen to escape the doom of flesh. As with all Necrons, the time of flesh was as hazy as a dream. Trazyn was forced to ask himself if the return to flesh was what he truly desired. To become like this being before him, to be vulnerable to sickness and disease, to once again experience the cancerous growths that could take his mind. Was that the path for all Necrons? The Clone Lord had left the galleries of Solemn Nace that day, offering in exchange for his freedom an even greater prize, a collection of Emperor's children for display. and a being Trazyn had failed to collect 10 millennia before. A Primarch. The Phoenician he had been called in life, and names far darker in his current form with the gods of Chaos's side. Though a perfect clone, Trazyn had prepared immediately for the display of Fulgrim. Trazyn, Overlord of Solemn Nace, Lord Archivist of the Prismatic Galleries, and he who is so-called Infinite, translated onto the surface of broken Solemn Nace. He had been here at the apex of life, when exodites of the Eldari claimed it, when it turned under the name of Kefril, and Trazyn had stolen the world spirit that sat at his hip. His mind dwelt on the journey that brought him here. The 10,000 years of scheming. The 10,000 years of scheming and battle against the one being he considered a rival in this galaxy. The last centuries without his colleague had been dull in a way. He had once again attempted to claim the artifacts of the long-missing Primarch Vulcan. And once again that petty being calling itself Vulcan Histan had foiled him. It didn't matter. He had plenty of what his adversary lacked. Time. Stalking through the tunnel network he had traced centuries and millennia before, he pondered on the recent events that had left him spiteful. When that accursed human calling himself Abaddon the Despoiler had launched another of his black crusades, heralded by the bell of Saint Gestahl upon Solemn Nace. Its ringing had caused untold damage to thousands of displays. This Abaddon had no appreciation for the thousands of hours of repair work needed. In the interest of his galleries, and definitely no other reason, Trazyn had even aided the humans on the world they called Cadia, his aid activating his people's ancient pylons. He had even wasted some prize collections to aid this war effort. It had been a shame when that reckless despoiler had plunged a Blackstone fortress into the planet. He had always wanted one of those. And now the galaxy was torn asunder, a warp rift splitting it in two. And finally the great awakening of the Necrons had come to pass. The Storm Lord running amok. Even rumours of the Silent King's return had reached Solemn Nace. But Trazyn was here, the world that had occupied his obsession for millennia. Perhaps in some way, the song, the code had permeated him as it had done Orikan, when the Diviner had attempted to betray him. Through the bedrock, through the ruins of imperial cities, through the jutting wraithbone fossils and black stone, Trazyn made his way closer to his prize. The tomb of Nephrith was in his grasp. Trazyn walked in the darkness for 30 days and 31 nights, until he found the gate chamber. The Eternity Gate rose monumental and black at the far end of the chamber. Cresting a great staircase, Trazyn dipped into his dimensional pocket, withdrawing the Asterium Mysterios. "It is time," he said. "To finish it," he said to himself. He let the Mysterios float towards the gate, glowing with heat and flickering. Trazyn held a breath he didn't have, his mind thinking of the greatest display the galaxy would ever see. A gallery waiting for its centerpiece. Nephrith the Untouched, the last Necrontyr and rebel of the Catan. "Trazyn!" a voice rasped from behind. Trazyn turned, stunned. He saw a creature he barely recognized. The heavily damaged frame of the one he thought lost. "Orikan?" he said. "Do not open the tomb. Do not do it," Orikan wailed, almost fanatically. Trazyn's laughter boomed. He was surprised to see his dear colleague alive. But in this state, did he think he could stop him? Trazyn, there are 2 songs, Orikan pleaded, stumbling as his broken form sparked. One is subtle, nearly undetectable, and it is a siren song, a virus that infects and attracts. Like the thing that makes humans want to be with the gene stealers. It fires obsession. It drove poor Quelkar mad. Trazyn felt pity for Orikan. Did he really believe this ploy was going to deter him? The second song is a number chain, Orikan continued. You were right. It is a book code, and it is a warning. A warning from Vishani. Trazyn turned, and to Orikan's horror, spoke the algorithm. Energies flashed as the Eternity Gate ballooned with life. Distorted like the surface of water, Trazyn stepped through into the hold of the Amunos dynasty. Into the tomb of Nethreth. Among statues carved by living Necron-tier hands, Trazyn's oculus darted around the vast chamber in wonder. Ranks of warriors last made in the time of flesh lined the processional. When Trazyn had possessed an organ that could be called a heart, it would have been beating now. He felt sensation like no other. He felt a greed, a superiority far beyond even his well-known arrogance. Metal hands tried to clutch at him. There is no winning, Trazyn, said Orikan. The divine in his broken form had followed him in, and now dragged at his cloak. Trazyn snatched it out of his grip, and Orikan took hold of the arc of his steel foot. Don't you see? Orikan wheezed. It has a hold on you. The Song of Serenade. It says, do not be deceived. Trazyn slammed him to the ground. How dare you? How dare you touch me, you insect? Trazyn spat, in a voice that was not quite his own. He placed his foot upon Orikan's nape and pressed, surprising himself for how much he enjoyed the cruelty of it. He left the diviner in the dirt as he strode towards the doors of the stasis crypt. Obliterator in hand, he smashed the seal, striding into the tomb of legend itself. His oculus finally locked onto the crypt, the tomb of Nethreth, humble as the Lord in life. Trazyn strode forward in anticipation, his oculus straying for just a moment at the crumpled form of a cryptek at its side, its eyes casting the same signal that he cared not to give any more attention to. Through the stasis field, Trazyn peered into the tomb of Nethreth, his body almost hesitant. The sight was too much, as Trazyn collapsed to his knees with a strangled sob. A Necron-tier in the flesh, a sight none had seen in 65 million years. Nethreth the Untouched raised gold filigreed hands and lifted off his mask and looked upon Trazyn with his true features. Trazyn the Infinite, Overlord of Solemnace, Master of the Prismatic Galleries, a being who had known death 1,000 times and captured the most wild and terrifying things in the galaxy, began to scream. For he knew the cruel smile and sardonic eyes, the face that filled with malicious joy at the revelation of a trick played and played well, a face that had butchered untold billions and eaten stars, that had stolen Trazyn's soul. It was the face of the deceiver. Child Trazyn, said Mephetran the deceiver, betrayer of the Necron-tier. I suppose I should express my gratitude Yet it did take you interminably long getting here. Trazyn said nothing, his hands clenched and unclenched, still down on one knee. Realization came slowly as he watched the Khitan's skull lengthen and deform, horns sprouting from the sides of the chronicle cranium to bracket the leering lips.
You have stolen Nephrith.
I am Nethreth, the abominable god said. It twisted the cuff bracelets, breaking the seals that contained it, broken from my greater amalgamation, and replacing him as a babeling. Why did you not think he was subject to disease and decay? Some genetic mutation or engineering? As if a lowly race as yours could produce such wonders.
But why?
The presence of the Khitan was overheating Trazyn's neural matrix. He was struggling to process the information. Much less data that rewrote history as he knew it.
Nephrith led the opposition to biotransference. He attacked the Khitan.
Convincing a civilization to part with their souls would never have been a mere seduction. There would always be separatists, rebels, those unconvinced. The stubborn and the hidebound, those with the most to lose. They who, unlike you, my hunchback child, were not so desperate. We gave them a figurehead to rally around, a candle to draw the moths. It paused. You would know all about that, would you not, child Trazyn? Trazyn stood and took a step backwards. Opening the tomb required two, said the deceiver. It did not step forward, but rose and glided, the lengthening hooks of his toenails scraping the black stone floor. One cunning enough to decipher Vishani's riddles, and one with a doggedness not to heed her pathetic distress signal. And, of course, it nodded at the obliterator. An artifact weapon that could break the seals of binding. Now, stand aside, child. You have done me a good turn, and in recognition, I suppose I will let you live.
I will not. You boast and brag, but Vishani found you out. Shunted and shackled you,
said Trazyn. And look at her reward. It cast a glance at the scattered hulk of parts crumbled against the wall. It came to put right a reactor malfunction in the Tesseract vault. I had but one moment to strike, and I took it. My body was still a prisoner, true, but as you can see, my unwitting servant, a great deal can be done with the mind, particularly if one has receptive puppets. The reactors cycled, an irregular thumping. Amber lights inside the vault flickered and blazed. Now, my little one, indulge me, for I did plant the idea to bring that Eldari gem for a reason. Trazyn looked down at the gem that had hung at his hip for 10 millennia. He felt a fool for bringing it here, not knowing whence the compulsion had come, too wrapped in his own whims and obsessions to question why he had wanted it. It was how I noticed you first, the deceiver continued. Fracturing the savage Eldari's world spirit did release so many scrumptious little souls to drink. But it has been a long imprisonment, and I require nourishment of a more potent variety.
I do not fear you,
said Trazyn, walking backward. Obliterator held at guard.
We defeated your kind, killed the star gods, shattered them, imprisoned them, yoked them like livestock to do our bidding. You are alone in the universe. Your kind is in chains.
Good, the deceiver chuckled. I did not fancy the competition. Keep my siblings, keep the rest of my own amalgamation. For all I care, it only means more for me. And like you false immortals, I do not mind being alone.
He's not alone,
said a voice at the doorway. Orikan stepped into the rectangle of light. Back straight, open wounds crawling with corpuscent, the necrodermis reformatting itself into its original shape.
Though he should be,
Orikan added. Ah, my master, Orikan, the abominable god said. Trazyn and Orikan ran, fleeing the shard of the deceiver, a shard of the creature that had tricked their race into undeath. The very shard now straining and buckling the cords that restrained it. You were right, said Trazyn. Entirely correct. We should not have come here. I should have listened. I should have trusted you. Guilt sparked through every cell of necrodermis in Trazyn's form. Pride, curiosity, and obsession had unleashed this doom. Soon it would free from its bonds. Free to use the Eternity Gates portal. Free to destroy Solemnace, Mandragora, and any other tomb world. But Trazyn was not alone. He extended his hand to Orikan. Twisting light restored the diviner to his previous brilliance, as the infinite and the divine prepared for war. Lucky for us, Trazyn said. We kill gods. If you could get an army between us and that, I would be indebted. Orikan slammed his metallic palms together. The implacable stone guardians. Only now Trazyn realized. Guarded the inside rather than intruders. They jutted forward in a parody of movement, like King Mischief and his puppets. It's working, said Trazyn. I know it's working, snapped Orikan. I made them the Astromancer. Orikan lifted his head, his single ocular locked in absolute focus. Kill the Star God. Orikan spoke to the Legion of Amunos. Stone forms cracked, revealing the metal beneath in places, as doomsday arcs rose above the phalanx of advancing Necrons. Arcs of fire beamed towards the floating gold humanoid, now free from its chains. Debris and stone burst in a final release, as with a smile that possessed nothing but malice, the deceiver charged. You bore me, children, said the bone-chilling voice. The deceiver reached out a hand and splayed its fingers. From its palm, sickly colored bolts flashed forward, reaping lines of immortals. Both Trazyn and Orikan had borne witness to the time of flesh, the war in heaven and the shattering of these gods. Yet nothing terrified them as much as hate itself, boring ever closer. Do you wish to taste flesh, my brave soldiers? Said the deceiver to a flanking force of immortals. The group ceased their firing. Their forms crunched and bent over, their fingers elongated into razor spikes, as Trazyn and Orikan saw the madness in their oculars take over. 100 flayers turned on their brethren. Trazyn stared in horror into the depths of the deceiver's eyes. It was an event horizon. The death and well of all knowledge Trazyn would have hunted to the very ends of the universe. It was the end sum. It was the hunger of obsession in pure energy. The deceiver opened its maw and howled a silent scream until it split not into 2, but 3. It's flattering itself, said Orikan. Throwing off shards so we cannot focus our fire. The ranks of Amunos were falling, rent from existence with each shard's swipe, or falling to the spreading corruption. If you have any little tricks in your pocket, said Orikan, I would appreciate knowing. Trazyn stood and rallied himself. When have I ever disappointed? Trazyn said, oculars fixed on the advancing Catan. Trazyn tore open reality, opening not merely a dimensional pocket, but a curve of space in front of him, laying out tesseract labyrinths. "I hope you brought an army," said Orikan, his concentration almost slipping. "You think little of me, dear colleague," said Trazyn, picking out a labyrinth. "I brought 5. In what Trazyn thought must have been a nightmare Orikan had once dreamt. Ranks of further Trazyn stepped out beside the original, as a phalanx of Nihalak immortals flowed forward, to reinforce the ever-escalating tide of metal that clashed and roared with violence. Trazyn hit the runes on his obliterator, perhaps the only weapon that could do some damage. With a rush of distortion, Trazyn's consciousness streamed through the ether and towards the battle. Trazyn's spirit algorithm flashed over the steel ranks, reading the battle feed Orikan was casting to him through the tactical combat network. Forcing his mind into a lich guard, Trazyn heaved his obliterator, slamming it down in a concussive boom that radiated into the corrupted ranks in front of him. Necron warriors poured through the gap that he had created. In the tomb of Nethreth, in the chamber that had been undisturbed for millions of years, 2 lions of violence slammed against each other repeatedly, as Trazyn darted between forms as the overmind of Orikan directed the land in sky jewels. Necroderma's bodies crashed around Trazyn. Never the warrior, yet he found himself reveling in the heat of battle. "Come on, fallen gods! Destroy me!" he roared. "I have broken your kind before." "You wish for me, child Trazyn," said the horrifying voice, carving through a phalanx of Lichguard. One of the 3 shards rocketed towards Trazyn. "Perhaps once free I will play call on solemn Nace. Ensure that not even atoms remain." It snarled. "Your forces fall," it whispered, floating in menace as Trazyn stood alone. "Your ally fails you. Even now the flay tear through the flank. Do you wish for an honorable death, child Trazyn? I shall give you one." Trazyn received a deployment alert, and felt a petty sort of satisfaction. "Clever long skull," he smiled, tempting me to check the battle feed. Yet the problem with a nickname like Deceiver is that beings might be disinclined to trust you. As for our forces being defeated, Reaping fire tore into the flank of the flayed lines. Unsure of how they were here, or what compelled them to fight, the infantry regiment of Serenade City unleashed their bolt rounds into the Xenos before them. Trazyn leapt forward. Obliterator met Star God Necrodermis, an explosion of light, sending Trazyn stumbling into the Blackstone. He rose again, as the snarling form of Manus was once again upon him. Feeling his cloak vibrating with heat from overuse, 2 hands shot out and lifted him into the air. Orikan's calls for aid were unanswered, as the sound of battle dimmed for this intimate moment. The shard poured into Trazyn, searching for the essence of the being that hid within the metal, sending for the first time in his undeath the sensation of pain. "This is pain," the shard snarled. "Did you not hope that Nethreth could put you in bodies of flesh, my child, so you could once again experience sensation?" With sickly enjoyment, the shard squeezed and drove its corruption deeper, enjoying the sight of Trazyn squirming, watching until the moment the light left his eyes. The obliterator slammed into the side of the shard's head, sending it reeling and dropping the empty corpse. Trazyn and his new surrogate raised the obliterator again, enjoying the enraged face that dripped with molten energy like blood. Yes, I know," Trazyn said. "Whoever made this seems to have not liked your kind." Trazyn leapt forward, sending careening blows into the shard's form, that sparked with each contact. He darted back, dodging the shattering blows that came from the side. The second Deceiver Shard had joined them. "Orikan," Trazyn signalled. "They're right on me." To Trazyn's frustration, and if he was honest, his leg-trembling fear, the second shard was stronger. His dodges and parries became more impossible. He felt his form sag with heat and damage. A long tendril shot forward, pinning him to the floor by his cloak. "Old fool," the two said in terrifying unison. "How apt it was you. Your fear that your failing flesh cannot support as a keen intelligence. That your biological systems was corrupting the genius of your mind. Yet they are dead like the soul I devoured. You are no different than the dead objects you preserve in your galleries." Trazyn did not have time to think on its words. Perhaps it was like he and that Fabi's bile had discussed. Perhaps the real Trazyn was dead, and what remained was a copy. He had no desire to dwell. He ripped his form out from under the tendrils, limbs breaking off as he threw himself to the side. Trazyn opened a dimensional pocket, thrusting a hand into it and emerging with another tesseract labyrinth. In prismatic light, a torrent of Xenos claws leapt into the fray. Gene stealers and their patriarch flooded on to the prey before them, rending claws punching through necrodermis as dozens swarmed over the injured shard. In a detonation of light and heat, the shard exploded, sending scorched tumbling forms into the air. Dragging his broken shell towards the wider conflict, Trazyn finally reached in range, fleeing into the surrogate at Orikan's side. The battle was growing smaller. Orikan calculated they had only 20% of their forces remaining. Trazyn and Orikan took in the scale of the destruction around the tomb. Necron corpses. The uncorrupted and flayers were strewn about in their thousands. The chamber's heights were lit with flyer fires as the aerial duels continued. They had hurt it, at least, they thought, until the largest of the shards plunged through the last of the gene stealers. It raised the near molten form of its lesser self, and sunk its teeth into its neck, devouring the last of its energy and life essence. It locked eyes with them as it finished its cannibalism. The Deceiver had clearly had enough, and it began to barrel towards them, never blinking, never losing its haunting stare, never losing its smile of malice. "Trazyn," said Orikan almost hauntingly. "Throw everything you have at it." Trazyn grabbed 3 more tesseract labyrinths. Each time it pained him to await the potential exhibit. From prisms of light, the roar of treaded vehicles gunned forward. Haphazard bolt guns and scrapped-together equipment unleashed from the wave of gene-stealer cults. Corkscrew contrails flew from another labyrinth, as storm boys roared into light, as they led the charge of the Orc War behind them. The chamber rocked with the tread of the massive Orc Stomper that began to plough into the oncoming Flayer horde. Lasguns and bolters snapped up from the line of Serenade Marines, the humans arraying around Trazyn and Orikan as their commissar roared commands. "They made it off, Serenade." Trazyn shrugged. "I picked them up later." Holding his last tesseract labyrinth, like a mother cradling her young, Trazyn reluctantly threw his last reserve. Stampeding shadows emerged from the light. Tattooed riders roared forward on their carnosaurs, as the exodites of long-dead Kefril joined the melee. One rider halted before Trazyn and Orikan, sporting a death mask Trazyn had not seen in millennia. "I told you, Trazyn," said the Farseer, "that this world sang for your blood. You did not listen, but listening was not your fate. It was your fate to continue digging, and our fate to perish here, against the horror you unleashed. The Farseer turned towards the violence. Make our sacrifice worth it. The Farseer leapt forward, as Wraithbone lances drive through the necrodermis wall. Trazyn and Orikan watched as the forces of sentient life clashed against the corrupted. Storm boys with rockets strapped to their backs, giggling as they detonated in fountains of gore and necrodermis. The Farseer dueling the Deceiver shard, as Genestealer hybrids and human guards sent reaping fire, all to the background thwomp of Lichguard blades, and the fizzles of Gauss flayers. "What is your next plan?" asked Orikan desperately. "Nothing. I have nothing," said Trazyn. He paused for a moment. "Can you still not take your empowered form?" he asked desperately. The cacophony of battle creeping closer and closer. "The stars are ill. There is no energy to draw upon," Orikan exclaimed. Reluctantly, Trazyn dipped his hand into his pocket and withdrew the Eldari gem. It gleamed in perfect form. It was the oldest thing Trazyn owned, the centerpiece of the War in Heaven gallery, the last object he possessed from the dawning of the Necrontyr. Were it gone, it would be an irrevocable loss. Another door to the ancient past closed. "See what you can draw from this," he said, handing the gem to Orikan's hands. The diviner cupped it, as if it were the most fragile thing in the universe. The gem began to glow. Soul-driven power drawn to the now heat-distorted form of Orikan. The diviner earned his name, as he began to shine, so bright even Trazyn had to shield his eyes. Orikan rose into the air, expanding and twisting as his form became pure energy. "Orikan!" Trazyn shouted, but Orikan was already gone. A bolt of lightning streaked through the chamber, lighting the tomb battle in blinding light, as two beings of energy thundered into each other. The battle so far had been child's play, to the titanic clash that dawned at its center. Trazyn could only watch in horror, as beings of pure energy sent titanic blows at each other, wounds that broke space and time itself. The backlash of their swing sending reverberations, cascading across the galaxy, wiping stars and planet like the specks they were. The two beings rose in the vaults, locked together, biting and clawing, burning the energy output of several industrial worlds for each second of combat. Each wound bled the furnace of creation into the physical plane. Each shot of star stuff, gobbled by the famished vampire that had once been Orikan the Diviner. Trazyn could barely look. He could barely hold witness to the devastation before him, though he was sure that on a molten face that had once bore a malice smirk, it was warped into a mask of fear. It was over. Trazyn stumbled through the tumult of corpses. Necron, human, Genestealer, Orc, and Eldari. He found Orikan in a corner, his battered legs drawn up to his chest, hands over his closed ocular. His entire frame, from headdress to lashing tail, had turned black. Trazyn wasn't quite sure if the Diviner had finally fallen, the energies having broken the limit of his strength. Or something much worse. A creature that had devoured the energy of one of the most vile things in the universe. "Orikan, have you suffered damage?" he asked. There was no answer. "My dear Orikan." Trazyn knelt and put a hand on his quaking shoulder plate. "Do not touch me," the Diviner wailed, trying to shrink back into the masonry. It's all right, friend. It's all right. Trazyn held up his palms to show he was no threat. I am scrying you for injury or malfunction. Orikan seemed almost comatose. As Trazyn ran a diagnostic scry, palm hovering around Orikan's cranium, longer than the rest of his body. Careful not to intrude too far in the divine space. He could respect that at least, after everything they had been through. Thank your stars, Orikan. It's not too bad. Nothing irrecoverable. Few servos here and there. I wonder there is not more, given how much energy you channeled. Is it gone? Orikan quivered. Trazyn wasn't sure if he referred to the Deceiver Shard, or to the creature he had become. You tore the Deceiver to pieces, dear rival. Sucked the energy out of each shard dry before casting it off. Trazyn brought a Tesseract Labyrinth out of his dimensional pocket, tapping on its surface. And I was here to catch them before they could flee. There are 5 of these, so yes, it is gone. I want to know about the other one. Is it gone? Orikan squawked. Trazyn paused. I do hope so, Orikan. I do hope so. Trazyn bent down and lifted his friend, supporting him so they could walk towards the ruined vault. We will leave the Mysterios here, sealed inside, so that none can find this place again. Indeed, said Trazyn. And Trazyn. The two stopped, meeting each other's gaze. It was now that Trazyn noticed that Orikan was temporarily blind. Make me an oath, an honor pact, that neither of us will ever come here again. Orikan held out a forearm, fused at the point so it could not move before the elbow servo. Agreed, said Trazyn, gripping the forearm, the oath seal. The contents of his vault are too dangerous for anyone to possess. Especially us, said Orikan. For 10 millennia, Trazyn and Orikan had chased the contents of the Tomb of Nethreth. A struggle that had wounded them both, for an ultimate lie. It did not need to be said aloud, Trazyn thought, that in this universe, he despised and loved his only true colleague, his only true friend, Orikan. The battle, the search for the tomb had shown what they could achieve together. And perhaps in another time, they will sit as friends. Friends whose philosophy on the path towards flesh or energy is discarded, for the folly it is. It was a curious thought, Trazyn agreed. It was a shame, then, that he had already broken his oath. Upon Solemnace, within a spherical prison, locked within a black stone chamber, behind several seals, a being of dull gold thrashed, particle whips burning its wrists and ankles. Trazyn stood over the lie he had kept from Orikan. Trazyn, overlord of Solemnace, archivist of the prismatic galleries, he who is so-called infinite, stared into the hateful gaze of the Deceiver. I see, said the Deceiver Shard, that it is time for more questions. What shall we be returning to this session, child Trazyn? Dispossession of the Catan Necron forces of the Siege of Pathia? Proper taxonomy of emergent demonic consciousnesses in the Empyrean? What knowledge would you like to explore? And what are you willing to pay for it? Trazyn dipped his hand into a dimensional pocket and drew out what appeared to be a small homunculus. The being no larger than Trazyn's hand had struggled in his grip. Radiance showed through the gaps in his fingers,
as he held the creature out for the deceiver's inspection. "It is so small," said the deceiver. "A shard of a shard. Never were the Nihalak known for its stinginess."
These are not simple to obtain, and we both know the risk I take in giving them to you at all.
"Yes." The deceiver laughed. The deep sound of it screened out by Trazyn's filters, so it did not upset his vitals. "We would not want me tearing through this prison, would we?" Trazyn felt at times a measure of guilt about having told Orikan there were only 5 shards, for keeping one for himself. Entranced by the amount of power these ancient shards held, the knowledge they had of the galaxy, and the knowledge of things impossible. "An inadequate sacrifice," the deceiver said, his long tongue curling over the plasma that dripped over its chin. "What do you wish in return?"
The Great Rift. I wish to know about its properties.
"Ah," the deceiver grinned. "So, you wish to close it?"
No, I wish to enter